Hello, what's up YouTube photographer Ronix in this tutorial I'll be showing you how you can easily edit a photo in comes Photoshop. And if at all you'd love to download this image to follow along, simply check the links in the description of this video. And this image was taken by T-Lens Visuals, and he's also a fellow YouTuber with photographic content and retouching tutorials, so you can always check him out. And I'll also link his channel in the description of this video. So to download this raw image file along, simply check the links in the description of this video, and you can download the raw file by T-Lens Visuals. So in order to import the raw image into Photoshop, this is what you have to do after downloading it. Simply right click on the image and come to open with and choose the Photoshop version that you want to use to edit the image. So for my case, I'm using Photoshop 2025, and remember it is a raw image and it's going to automatically open up the camera raw filter. So when it comes to camera raw, this is what you have to correct. So after importing the image into Photoshop, and you can see it is a raw file taken using an Nikon Z5. So we want to first of all correct the lighting and contrast issues regarding this very image. So we shall come to the light option and simply drop the highlights of this image, and shall drop the whites, then drop the blacks a little bit to around -18, and open up the shadows to have back information in the shadow areas, and we shall add some contrast to the image. Then you're just going to come to exposure and open up the exposure of the image, and you can see the before and the after. So after doing this, we're just going to go straight into the color grading process and try to manipulate these colors. So we're going to come to where you see color mixer and make sure it is in the mixer mode or the HSL panel. And by the way, if at all you have Lightroom, you can as well follow these steps to edit this very image. So when you come to the mixer option under color mixer, we have HSL, which is basically meaning hue, saturation, and luminance. So when you're playing around with the hues, we are changing a color. For example, if at all we look at the yellows, you can manipulate or change the yellows. So when we move the yellow slider towards the right hand side, we are making the yellows look like the greens, as you can see on this slider, and we are making the yellows look like a color below it, which is the greens. And when we move the yellow slider towards the left hand side, we are making the yellows more orange, which is the color on top of it. So basically hue is changing a given color, then saturation is the intensity of a given color. You can increase on the intensity of the yellows, or you can reduce on the intensity of the given color in the image. Then luminance is the brightness levels of a given color. You can darken the yellows or you can brighten the yellows. So after understanding how HSL is going to be affecting the image, it is now time to apply it to this very image. So what do we want to do? We just want to manipulate, for example, the blues and create that kind of cyan feel. So we're going to come to our hue and target the blues first of all. So we're just going to make the blues towards the aqua side, and we're also going to play around with the aqua slightly. Then after doing that, we're just going to come to saturation and slightly increase on the saturation of the blues. And you can see by turning this on and off, you can see how this is affecting the image. There's nothing as crazy happening to the image. So after you have done this, you're just going to come to the luminance and slightly brighten up the blues in this case. Then you're going to make the image pop a little bit more by scrolling down to where you see calibration, and under calibration we're just going to go straight to the blue primary right here and come to the saturation and simply take up the saturation. And by just doing this, you can see the image or the colors in the image are going to pop a little bit more, and you can see the before after. So if at all you want to manipulate the yellows in this case, you can come back to the color mixer and simply target the yellows and make the yellows look better by making them towards the oranges, and you can keep on playing around with these colors to your taste or to your liking. So I'm just going to leave this and play around with this to make some kind of a complementary feel of the colors in the background. And you can see before and after for this very process in Camera Raw. So after color correcting, color grading, so this is the step of color grading of this image. You're just going to come and make sure that we have changed these settings to 16-bit. So click on that option and come to where you see color space, come to depth and simply change it to 16 bits per channel and simply select that, and make sure output sharpening is checked and sharpen 4 is checked in this case. Select screen and simply use the amount or set the amount to standard and click OK. So every single time you open up your image when it comes to Photoshop, it is going to keep and save these settings for you. So you're going to be saving or creating this step for the 16-bit and everything once in Camera Raw. So every single time you open up Camera Raw, it is always going to save these settings and it is going to apply them to your images. So after doing this, you're just going to come and click on open in order to open the photo into Photoshop. And in Photoshop, the very first thing we tend to do when it comes to editing an image is simply coming and getting the crop tool and choose a ratio of 45 or 8:10. If at all we intend to post this image on social media, that is Instagram to be precise. So you have changed the settings of the crop tool to 4:5 or 8:10 and done that. And after doing that, we're just going to come down here and simply crop in the image. So right now we have cropped in the image, and you're just going to move the crop tool even lower and make sure the subject is close to the center and simply hit enter or return in order to crop the image. So after you have cropped the image, what we have to do next is simply working on the image. So in order to work on the image, we want first of all do the skin retouching. And in order to do the skin retouching this very image, we are simply going to come and first of all clear the background by getting the spot healing brush tool and make sure the mode is set to normal. And after doing this, simply dab over the softbox to eliminate it. So you're just going to be using frequency separation to retouch this image and smoothen the skin. So remember, frequency separation divides the image into the colors and the textures. So we're going to come to the background layer right here and simply duplicate it 2 times by pressing Ctrl J 2 times. So Ctrl J once, and you can use Command J if at all you're using Mac. Then Command J, or you can use Ctrl J the second time. Then double click on this layer and simply rename this layer to color, and you're going to double click on this name and rename that to texture. So sorry about my spelling, so I'm just going to rename this once again to texture. And after renaming it, we're just going to come to the color layer and turn off the texture layer. So in this layer, we only want to remain with the colors. And in order to do that, we are simply going to come and first of all come to filter, come to blur, and come to Gaussian blur right here. So filter, blur, come to Gaussian blur, and after selecting it, take the radius all the way down to 0.1 and click on an area that seems to have more skin details or skin textures and use the zoom in tool to zoom into that area. And after doing that, just left click on the radius slider and start taking it up. So drag it up and stop at the point whereby the details or the textures are just starting to disappear from your image. So for this case, around 4 pixels, that is when we're just starting close out on the skin textures or the skin details, and simply click on OK. So after doing this, just come and select the texture or high frequency layer, this top layer that we had, and now activate it. simply come to image and come to apply image, and it's going to open up the apply image dialog box right here in Photoshop. So come to where you see source. So the source is basically the name of the image that we are editing. The layer, come and select the color layer, because we are extracting the textures from the color layer. That is why we have selected the color layer. The channel has to be RGB, and under blending, make sure the blending is set to add, because we are editing a 16-bit image. And remember, 16-bit images are going to always have information, richer colors, and more details. So under blending, it is add. The scale has to be to offset 0, opacity at 100%, preserve transparency, and mask cannot check. And make sure invert is turned on, and you'll see the textures on this square layer. And on the other hand, if at all you are editing an 8-bit image, if at all you have 8 right here, it means your image is going to be an 8-bit image. After selecting the color layer and using a channel of RGB, make sure the invert option is not turned on, and the blending has to be subtract. The scale has to be 2 and offset 128. Make sure the opacity is 100%, preserve transparency and mask cannot check, and make sure that you'll have the details on this square layer, and click OK. So our image is a 16-bit image, so I'll simply come and revert to 16-bit settings. Scale is 2, offset 0, and turn on the invert option, and make sure it is checked, and click OK. Come to where you see normal and change the blend mode from normal, change it all the way down to linear light, and you'll see or have back the information in the image the way it was meant to be. Select both layers by holding down Ctrl or Command, then press Ctrl G, or you can use Command G on the keyboard to put these two layers in a group. So we are done separating this image into the textures and the colors. So open up the group by clicking on the drop down arrow, and simply come and turn off the texture or high frequency layer. The reason for turning off the texture layer is because we want to blend or even out the skin tones that are part of the color layer in this very image. So come and select the color layer. So basically the reason for using frequency separation is because we want to perfect the colors alone and also perfect the textures alone. So after editing and perfecting the colors independently and perfecting the textures independently, when we combine both perfected layers, we end up with what we refer to as a retouched image, or an image that has been skin retouched. So we have selected the color layer, and we're going to come to the brushes, right click and get the mixer brush tool. If at all your mixer brush tool is not displaying under the brushes, you can always locate it down here, or simply right click and come to edit toolbar, and you select or locate your mixer brush tool. So mine is under the brushes, and come and make sure the hardness set to 0 and soft round brush is selected. Then make sure clean brush is selected, and we have two options right here. One is saying load brush after each and every stroke, and the second one is basically clean brush after each stroke, which is the option that we are going to be using. Make sure that this one has been selected. We are going to be using a weight of 9%, load 75%, mix at 90%, and flow at 100%. Make sure sample all layers is not turned on, because we only want to edit the color layer or the colors in the image, and we don't want the brush to sample information from all these layers and painting textures back into the selected layer, which is the color layer. So what we want to do in this case, we are simply going to slightly zoom into the image and start blending on the skin. So in order to blend, we are going to be using different sizes of the brush tool, and you can increase or reduce on the size of the mixer brush tool by using the open square brackets on the keyboard, or the open and close square brackets on the keyboard. So to blend, we simply make sure the size or the brush is set to its original circular format or shape, and if at all the brush is displaying a plus icon, make sure you deactivate the caps lock key. And as you're trying to blend the skin tones in the image, we are going to ensure or make sure that we increase or decrease on the size of the brush by using the box bracket keys on the keyboard, and depending on the area that we want to work on. So you have to make sure the size of the brush is going to remain within the colors of an area that you're going to be working on in this case. So we just want to apply the mixer brush tool. So how to apply it? We simply left click and hold down and drag until we have blended a given color in a given area, and left click once again and mix to blend on a new area once again. So left click, hold down and blend, and after blending a given color, you release the left click button and simply left click once again to blend on a new area. So mix the highlights alone, mix the shadows alone, and mix the midtones alone. So that is what I'm going to be doing, and you always have to follow the way a given area is shaped to keep and maintain the original shape of your model or your client's face. So you can see for this highlight, I'm moving the brush following its direction so that I can keep and maintain her original facial structures. So I'm just going to be doing this onto the rest of the body. So you can see I'm moving the brush in and up down direction because that's the direction of her neck. So I'm just going to be doing this. For the collarbone, I'll follow the collarbone direction. And you can see I'm not zooming all the way in. I am retouching at a distance because I want to evenly or quickly identify the areas that have uneven skin tone transitions, and I just want to blend them better. So I'm just going to be doing this for the rest of her skin so that it can be smooth enough and more appealing. So I'm just going to hold down the space bar key on the keyboard and left click and hold down and drag up if at all I want to drag to a new area and work on it to perfect it. So reduce on the size to work on a small area and just blend every area that has uneven skin tone transitions. So I'm just going to reduce on the size and work or blend her fingers in this case. So you can now come and turn on the texture or high frequency layer and look at what we have been able to achieve. So you can see the overall before and after for just blending the skin tones, and we have been able to smoothen her skin while keeping and maintaining the original skin textures or skin details of our subject. So what do I do right now? We just want to remove the blemishes, and remember blemishes are part of the texture layer or the textures in the image. So just come and select the texture layer this time around and come and select the clone stamp tool, or you can press S on the keyboard. S is going to select the clone stamp tool. Then make sure the hardening is set to 0%, and after doing that, simply with the mode set to normal, opacity in the flat 100%, align this checked, and make sure the sample is set to current layer because we want to remove blemishes that are part of the currently selected layer. And after doing this, you just want to remove the blemish. So make sure you zoom all the way in by using Ctrl plus on the keyboard, or you can use Command plus on the keyboard to zoom in. So to remove, for example, this blemish, we reduce on the size of the clone stamp tool by using the box bracket keys on the keyboard, or you can even increase on the size of the clone stamp tool by using the close box bracket key on the keyboard. And to remove a pimple, we make sure that the size of the clone stamp tool is slightly bigger than the blemish that we want to remove. Then hold down the option key on the keyboard for mark. For Windows it is the alternate key on the keyboard. So hold it down and left click on a clean area near the pimple or the blemish that we want to remove, and release the option key on the keyboard or release the alternate key if at all you're using Windows, and simply left click once again over the pimple to replace that pimple or to replace the blemish with clean skin. So that is what I'm going to be doing for the rest of the pimples or the rest of the blemishes on her skin. So you can see this is going to be a very easy and effective way to remove pimples and blemishes in the most perfect way. So I'm just going to be doing this for the rest of the blemishes on her skin so that I can have a better and smooth skin for our subject. So this is what I have to do. So to remove a line, we simply copy and draw over the line. So I'm just going to be doing this for the rest of the areas that have pimples and most of these imperfections on her skin, so that it can look better than it was initially before. And the other trick you have to use, always keep on zooming in and zooming out to see or identify those imperfections in those given areas. So I'm just going to increase on the size and try to remove all these blemishes on her face. And you can see, always move around to identify all those imperfections on her skin. You can see all these lines can be removed if at all you really wanted to. So I'm just going to scroll and make sure that every blemish has been dealt with on her skin. Ctrl minus to zoom out, or you can use Command minus to zoom out, and you can see the overall before and after for the skin retouching process. So right now we just want to create even skin tones for our subject, and in order to do that, you're simply going to create a stamp visible layer. And basically a stamp visible layer is more of a screenshot for, or a merged layer for everything that we have right here. So to do that, you're simply going to use Shift Option Command E on the keyboard. That is for Mac. For Mac it is Shift Option Command E on the keyboard. Then for Windows it is Shift Alternate Control E on the keyboard, and it's going to create a merged layer for everything that we have below here. And when that is done, we are simply going to come and create a new empty layer. Then come back to this layer that we have below and simply come to Select and come to Subject, and it's going to automatically select the subject for us. But if at all you don't have this option, you can use any of the quick selection tools, or you can even use the pen tool. But to save time, we have used the automatic selection for Photoshop. So I'm just going to undo this. So you can as well use the quick selection tool by simply selecting over the subject just like that, and to do basically the same thing. But for my case, I'm just going to use Select and simply come to Subject. So remember, I have selected on the merged layer that we created, and Photoshop has selected the subject. So we're just going to come to the empty layer that we created initially before, change its blend mode from normal and change it to color. And after doing that, just come and get the brush tool. So this time we are using the normal brush tool, and make sure the hardness is set to 0. Soft round brush is selected, the mode is set to normal, opacity 100%, flat 100%, and we're just going to zoom into the image all the way. And after zooming in, we just want an area on her skin that we want the rest of the skin to look like. So we just want to sample a color from her skin that we want the rest of her skin to look like. So hold down the Option key on the keyboard, or you can hold down the Alternate key on the keyboard and left click on that color that we want the rest of her skin to look like. Alternate and left click, Option and left click, that is for Mac. And after choosing that color, we are simply going to use Ctrl minus to zoom out, and with the brush tool selected, we are simply going to start painting over her skin. Ctrl minus. So we're just going to paint over her skin, and by just doing this, you can see the skin is going to start getting to look even and more uniform. So keep away from painting the makeup, because at the end of the day you don't want to distort the original makeup that was applied in the beautification process of your model or your client. So you don't want to distort that, because they do invest a lot in that. So I'm just going to paint on each area that has skin. I don't mind if at all we accidentally paint on a given area, because we can always come back and correct that area. So I'm just going to paint on the hand. And remember, initially we created a selection of our subject, and the reason for that was because we didn't want to paint out of the edges of the subject. So I'm just going to paint just like that. You can use a small brush if at all you want to paint on a small area, and you know what to do. You can use the bracket keys to reduce on the size of the brush depending on the area that you're trying to work on. So I'll slightly zoom in by using Ctrl plus, and make sure or ensure that I have painted on each and every area, be it a small area. So you can see we hadn't painted on this area just there. So I'll just come and paint on those small areas that I could not have painted when I was painting at a distance. So keep away from the eyebrows and some particular areas like the lips and the lipstick and even the hair itself. So after doing this, the next thing is going to be refining. You can see you just want to refine some particular areas. So in order to refine these areas, you're going to come and get the eraser tool and make sure the mode is set to brush, opaque at 100%, flat 100%, and we are simply going to erase or rub away the effect from the areas that we don't want to be affected. And by the way, the hardness of the eraser is set to 0, so I'll just erase it from her eyebrows just like that, and erase it from these parts of her hair. And this really takes time to perfect, so you don't expect to rush through this process. So you can see that we hadn't painted on this area, so I'll press B for the brush tool and paint colors, then E for the eraser tool to erase the effect from those areas, B for the brush tool and paint back color in this small area, E for the eraser tool, and I'll try to erase the colors from that area of her outfit. So to increase on the size of the eraser tool, you can use the bracket keys as usual. So I'm just going to do this. So command minus, you can see what we have, but the effect is a little bit too much. So you can always come the opacity and reduce on the opacity so that the effect can look natural as possible. And you can see before, after. So when you find that the color is a little bit too much for your liking, so just want to deselect the subject by pressing Ctrl D, or you can use Command D on the keyboard. So when you find that the color is too much for your liking, simply come to hue and saturation, change it from master and select the reds, and simply come to lightness and simply reduce on the lightness of the reds just like that. Around -12 is going to reduce on the amount of the orange color within her skin tones. Then you're going to come and create a selective color adjustment layer and simply come and target the blacks and come to where you see cyans, and you're just going to take up the cyan slider to around 10, and that is going to make the image pop. You can see before, after. So after you have done this, the next thing is going to be whitening the eyes of our subject. And in order to whiten our eyes, we're simply going to come and create a hue and saturation adjustment layer. Come and make sure master is selected and simply come to where you see saturation and take down the saturation size at around -79. Make sure the white layer mask is selected and simply press Ctrl I, or you can use Command I on the keyboard to invert the effect. Then you're going to come to the brushes and get the brush tool and make sure we have black and white on these two color swatches. If at all you have any other random color apart from black and white, you can simply press D on the keyboard, or you can simply left click on these two small squares Then you're going to zoom into the image by using Ctrl plus on the keyboard, or you can use Command plus on the keyboard. Zoom into the eyes. Make sure white is the foreground color. You can switch between black and white by using the arrow key, or you can use X on the keyboard. With white as the foreground color, remember in Photoshop, white is going to reveal and black is going to hide. So with white as the foreground color, we are simply going to paint on the eyes to reveal the whitening effect on the eyes. And if at all you have teeth in the image, you can do the same for the teeth whitening. So this is what we have been able to achieve in just Photoshop for the skin retouching and color grading. And let's see the overall before and after. So this is the image initially, before, after for just Photoshop. And you can see the image looks better than where we started. So right now we just want to save the image so that it doesn't change in color. And remember, we want to save a very sharp image. So in order to save a sharp image, this is what you have to do. Simply come right here to File, Export, and come to Export As. And it's going to open up the Export As dialog box when it comes to Photoshop. And make sure the format is set to JPEG. Make sure the quality is all the way to the maximum, which is 7 for my case, which is the highest quality. And make sure under resample, the resample is set by cubic sharper, because as you're saving the image, you want Photoshop to slightly sharpen the photo for us. Then if at all you don't want the image to change color when you print it out or when you post it on social media, simply make sure Convert sRGB and also Embed Color Profile have been checked, and simply click on Export, and you can rename the file if at all you wish to. Choose a location where you want to save the image and simply come and click on Save in order to save the image in that location. And after saving the image, it is going to automatically close this window and take you back to Photoshop. So this is how you can easily edit, color grade, do eye whitening, and also color correct your images when it comes to Photoshop. And if at all you have enjoyed this video, don't forget to like this video, and don't forget to subscribe if at all you have been watching and you are not a subscriber yet to this channel. Ronix from Ronix Photography. Thank you for watching. I'll see you in yet more videos on this channel. Don't forget to keep practicing and also keep creating.